Well, good morning, everybody. I tell you what, it's one thing to be beat when you're preaching and somebody has a full message, but Daniel does it every week during the announcements, which is just amazing. Daniel does a great job as our connections pastor, and I tell you what, if you haven't had the chance to meet him and you're new here to Piedmont Church, go over to that Connections Lounge. That's where I'll be right after the service, and look forward to meeting many of you. Well, I've had an eventful last few days. I've just opened the new homeless shelter at Must Ministries, and so we did it over a 4-day period. And so we had an open house. The first open house was for our volunteers, and in 2019, before the pandemic, we had over 17,000 people who volunteered across the course of a year. We're very much just, volunteer driven. And then the next day, we got to take all of our employees in and allow them to be able to see the new building. Then on Friday, we had the distinct honor of having Governor Kemp and Mayor Tumlin, along with Commissioner Lisa Cupid, Commission Chairwoman Lisa Cupid, was with us, along with many other dignitaries and city council members and commissioners, and it was just a remarkable day on Friday. And then on Saturday, we opened up the building, and we had probably about 500 people from the community that came in and visited. And then I ran over here yesterday, and there was a wedding here, and Saba, who is the daughter of Peggy and James Grable, she was married here in a beautiful ceremony. So I have had a jam-packed week. It has just been so good. And then I was shocked on Thursday when they took the chapel that Piedmont paid for the furniture and everything inside of that chapel. And they, not only is it named after Piedmont, but they attached my name to it as well. And that was a total shock. Had no idea that it was coming, but man, I thought for a moment, I hope the good Lord is letting my parents look down right now. And in particular, my mom, because my mom is the one who, used to take care of the people that were homeless. Back when I was growing up, they were often referred to as hobos, and they rode the trains all across the country. And my mom would always take care of them and feed them. And so I guess that's where I got my heart for that type of ministry. So it was a very, very special time. And today is a very special time. I mean, I'm so excited about preaching this message. As a matter of fact, I went over about 10 minutes in the early service today because we're finishing up, in case you haven't been here, we're finishing up a series called What in the World Am I Here For? But today I've changed that to What in the World are we here for? I'm talking about those of us that attend this church, or we're a member of this church, or maybe we're a part of that online family that's there and you believe in what we're doing. And so many of those people that are watching online, they financially support us. And when Marlon is doing, a different emphasis around Love Does, you're great to support it. And so we've had all of these new people that have come in since the pandemic. We lost some people during that time. Many of them moved away. Like I gave a shout out earlier to Danny Brundage and his wife Donna. They were such faithful members serving here for just about the entire time that I've been here. And Danny worked, in the area with all that crew that gets everything on the screen, and just did a stellar job doing work here for us. And they moved down to Destin, Florida. So they're down there off 30A having a great time today. And we've had some people shifting in and out. So what we started noticing with our staff is we were meeting all these brand new people. That's why we started the Connections Lounge, so that we could start meeting all of you, but in particular meeting people who are new to the church, and to be able to get to know them and to be able to start developing friendships. So we've been so blessed in the the life of this church in the middle of everything that God just continues to use us and continues to bless us and give us favor in our community. And so that's exciting. So today, I'm going to talk to you about becoming the Why Not Church as we finish up the series. Today's title, What in the World Are We Here For? And I want to start with a great quote that is an amazing quote. It's by a theologian named A.W. Tozer. And I want you to listen very carefully to this. And for those of you that make notes, you might want to make a note. Because maybe you're at that season in your life where you're going, I always thought that God was going to do something with my life. I always felt like I would find that niche, I would find that place, and then I would really begin to feel like God is going to use me. And maybe you feel like that season has passed you by. And I think a lot of people here today would probably be in that place. And Tozer's quote is so strong because here's what he says. He makes really three assertions here in his quote. He says, anything that God has ever done, He can do right now. Think about that thought. Anything that God has ever done, He can do right now. And this is the theologian that my guess would be if you talk to Andy Stanley and you talk to Louis Giglio, both of those guys leading tremendous ministries at North Point and at Passion City, they would probably tell you A.W. Tozer was a huge influence on them. And Tozer's idea here is to remind us that anything that God's ever done, He can do right now. Just like, the way that He worked in the book of Acts and the things that took place there with the early church. Everything that took place then can take place right now. And then he says the next assertion. Anything that God has ever done anywhere, He can do right here in this community. Right here in the life of this church. We've used a lot of the sermons in the series is from Saddleback Community Church and Rick Warren. And what an amazing job my buddy's done out there. I love Rick. He's just the real deal. And it's been incredible with a purpose-driven life. How many people's lives have been changed reading that book and getting that sense of purpose. And it's been incredible what's happened in that church. But anything that God has done there, anywhere, God could do right here in the life of this church. And then listen to the third assertion that really applies to you. Anything that God has ever done for anyone, He can do for you. Anything that God has ever done for anyone. You hear me quote many times Zig Ziglar. And I tell you, that was my mentor. That was my hero. And a lot of what I get to do are the things that I saw Zig do in his life. And now I get the opportunity to be able to do that. And so maybe look around if you're kind of in a funk or you're at a place where you're trying to go, what do I really want to do? And maybe you're just not quite getting, maybe God's called you to an area of ministry and you're going to, it's just not clicking the way that I thought it was going to click. I just want to remind you that anything God has ever done, He can do right now. Anything that God has ever done anywhere, He can do right here. And anything God has ever done for anyone, He can do for you. And so I want you to know that today, and I want to take you to one of my favorite passages in the Old Testament about having a vision in life. You do understand how important that is, right? I mean, that you do understand about having a vision, about making sure that you're writing down your goals and you're doing those kinds of things. And sometimes I'll have people say to me, well, do you really think that's biblical, like the goal setting and things like that? This is the passage I send them to, Habakkuk chapter 2, because what Habakkuk is going to talk about is having a vision. So first of all, I'm going to remind you that in the scripture it says, without a vision, people perish. Without having a vision, people perish. Do you realize that some people die at 25 years old, but they don't bury the body until they're 80? because something happened in their life. Maybe a marriage failed. Maybe a business opportunity that you had didn't come through. Maybe the job and the career you always thought you were going to be involved in didn't happen. And you become disappointed and you become discouraged to the point that you never really started living again. And I'm telling you that this passage of Scripture can restart your life. I promise you it can. Now, God is not going to do every little piece for you. You've got to make sure that you're doing what you need to do in order to be able to experience everything that God wants for you. In other words, when you and I have done all that we can humanly do, then God does what only He can do. And He provides miracles, and He provides connecting points, and He provides relationships and encounters that take place that can absolutely change your life. And again, here's why it's important. Without a vision, the people will perish. You've got to have something driving you forward. And that's why at this particular stage in my life, at my age, the quote that's really driven me that I created for myself is, the day that your memories are greater than your dreams, you're dead in the water. You hear me say that so many times. I'm preaching to myself because I've been blessed. I've seen a lot of great things happen, and that's terrific. But I don't want my past successes to rob me of my future opportunities. And if I just sit back and go, well, yeah, you know, I've had that, I've been able to do that, that's been great, that's been fun, and now I'm just finished. You know, I saw where the comedian, the actor Jim Carrey said this week, he said, I've already done all that I can do, and I'm just done. I've already done all that I can do, and I'm just done. And that broke my heart for him, because he's just going to dry up. You got to have something drawing you forward. You got to have something giving you energy so that you can give energy to it. And it creates this flywheel effect for you in your life. And so also remember that the Bible says, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Without a vision, people will perish. As a man thinks in his heart, so is he. Not what you're saying to people on the outside, not what you're trying to project that your life is all great and you're an Instagram baby and you know, everything's just super cool and everything is just wonderful. I always love those scenes right after they take that picture where it all looks so perfect and their world goes to hell in a handbasket, man. It's just boom, everything happens. So I want you to understand today, you need a dream. I want you to understand today that we need a dream. I need you to be dreaming. I need you to be doing some things that is going to help to change the world. I've got a buddy named Eric. I won't call his last name and embarrass him or anything, but he called me this week and he was talking to me, and he's got a new book that's coming out, and he asked me to do a piece in the book. And Eric has done extraordinarily well financially. And he told me, and it so overwhelmed my heart. He said, Ike, I sat there as an 11-year-old kid listening to you preach. And he said, and he had a very pronounced stuttering problem at that age that he was going through. And so he said, you know, I sat there, I had the stuttering issue. It made me much more introverted, all of those kinds of things. And he said, I was really, you know, struggling. He said, but I remember hearing you say, God is going to raise up millionaires in the life of this church because I have $1 million dreams. And God didn't raise me up to be a millionaire. I would have been just fine if He did. And Lord, you still have time. Go ahead and just nail it for me. But I've never been focused on money. That's not my motivation. That's not what, you know, gets me going. But I know this. There are some people sitting in this room right now, you've got the gift set, you've got the abilities, God could make you a millionaire, but if all you do is spend it on you, you're not going to be happy. You're not going to be fulfilled. And God will let a lot of money flow through your hands if you don't let it all stick to your fingers. And so Eric was sharing with me how through the years, he said, I had like a tape. And I could hear you saying that. And he said, and now I'm there. Now, you know, God has blessed me. And now he's doing this book about his journey and everything that he's going through. So, man, Eric, if you're watching this, you have no idea what that meant to my life to think, here's an 11, 12-year-old boy that's listening to something that he said has stayed with him every step of the way. Listen, there's people in this church right now. God wants you to be a millionaire, because God wants you to share it and God wants you to use it. And I'm just telling you, that's the way that things work. So some people, God gives the gift of being able to make money. Now then, you say, I want to be one of those people, all right? I'm going to show you the key right here. This Old Testament passage, it's in the book of Habakkuk. It's in chapter 2, and it starts with verses 2 and 3. Now watch what happens right off the bat. Habakkuk writing, then the Lord answered me. Now you know what that presupposes? That he was already praying and talking to God. If you want to be able to get a vision from God, you got to spend time with God. I mean, you got to spend time in his word. You got to spend time in prayer. You need to set aside some time each day. My favorite practice is, for me, this year, my word is mindfulness. I want to be more mindful of where I am, and I want to be present where I am. So when I wake up in the morning, I think of 5 things I'm thankful for today. 5 things, you know, I start thinking about people that I know. Man, I'm so glad, Lord, you gave me a best friend like a Pat Flood. Man, Lord, I was thankful this week because a buddy of mine named Todd Walters I do work with, he showed up at the ribbon cutting and was so encouraging. Another buddy of mine named Hal Blackman, he's on his honeymoon, and Lord only knows, he sent me a tape, I think he was in Dubai, and just saying, hey, congratulations. One of the things I'm most thankful for are my friends. I think about my buddy Larry Wynn, who's been my best friend since college. And you say, Ike, you seem to have a lot of best friends. I sure do. I sure do. And I love them, and I'm so thankful for them. I think about the friends that I have on our staff here and how proud I am of them and how thankful I am. Every day I'm thinking about different people that I'm just so thankful for in my life. And that's what keeps me going. So Habakkuk has made a friend of the Lord. I would highly suggest that he become your best friend. And so it says, then the Lord answered me. So that means he's been praying, and he said, are you ready? Record the vision, inscribe it on tablets. There's a visual here. In the Hebrew world, they did a lot of their writing on clay tablets, especially there in the Older Testament. And they would take this little thing called a stylus, and they would sit there and they would etch these letters, and they would do it repeatedly until you finally had it nice and deep inside the clay. And so what he's saying to us is, you need to record what God is showing you. You need to write it down, and you need to write it on tablets when God is showing you what he's showing you. You need to keep up with it. You need to write down your goals. You need to do that. Hope is not a strategy, all right? I just hope I'm going to be a millionaire. I just hope these things are going to work out. You've got to get a plan. Look, you either live your life by default or you live it by design. And you're going to live your life one of 2 ways. You're just going to get hit with what life brings to you, or you're going to begin to create your life. And listen, if you aren't creating your future, someone else will create it for you. I would highly suggest you be the one that's in charge of that and not just allow circumstances to drive you. And when he says, inscribe it on tablets, then he tells you the reason why he's telling you to do this. That the one who reads it, that's you. It may be other people you bring into your loop. And I would tell you, be very careful about who you share your dreams with. There are people who are just dream crushers. Man, you'll tell them some dream you have, they'll just immediately throw cold water on it. I mean, just, right out of the chute. I do a lot of work with realtors, and one of the things I run into with them is I'll ask this question. How many of you, when you got into selling real estate, did somebody in your family tell you you're never going to make any money there? And virtually every one of their hands go up, right? Because there are just some people who will crush your dreams. You got to be careful, especially in the early stages with your dreams, of who you share it with. But here's the deal. He says, you pray, you record the vision, you write it out on tablets that the one who reads it may run. That's you. That's you. Why is he telling you to write things down? How many of you have trouble remembering things? Let me see your hands, all right? Robin and I have a unique solution. When we're going somewhere, I remember where we're going. She remembers who we are when we get there. And that way it's a lot easier. It's not a burden on just one person, right? But it's so easy to forget something. And it's so easy to go, man, what was it the Lord spoke into my heart that day? What was it the Lord told me, write this down? And here's why that's important. Watch this. For the vision is yet for an appointed time. Here's the deal. Sometimes there's lag time between what God promised you is going to happen and when it actually happens. There's lag time. How do you handle the detour? How do you handle the disappointment? How do you handle the delays? Well, if you don't write it down, and let's say weeks go by and months go by, maybe even years go by, then you lose the impetus in your life of what that really meant to you. You lose the power. You lose the motivation. That's why you've got to write it down, that the one who reads it may run. So what he's telling you how to do right here, listen to me carefully. One of the biggest deterrents to you achieving your dream is the law of inertia. And the law of inertia says this: an object at rest will tend to stay at rest until an object of greater force comes along. You want me to give you a mental picture of this? Me in the fall. I love Saturdays in the fall, because it starts for me early in the morning with the crew from game day. And I'm going to, get to sit there and watch the college football game day. I'm going to watch the bus roll in. I'm going to look at Lee Corso and go, man, I'm a lot like him. And I'm going to, listen to Kirk Herbstreit and all the other people that are there and all the guest pickers that they have to come in. I start out my Saturday watching that football game. Then I get to watch the first game at high noon. Man, that is great. Then I'm going to get to watch the Georgia Bulldogs at 3:30 because they get the marquee games. And so I'm going to get to watch them. And then I'm going to watch somebody that night that's going to be closing it out, probably Alabama. And so my day is wonderful. I am an object at rest on Saturdays. Right there, my leather chair. Some of my family's here. They'll tell you, yep, he's got his chair. And I angle that puppy up just right. And I got an ottoman I pull up beside it. I mean, I've got everything I need to stay there. And this object will stay at rest until an object of greater force enters the room. And that object has a name, Robin. And she will walk in and say, weren't we going to go and do da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da? And all of a sudden, I've had an object of greater force come into my life. That's what a vision does for you. The object of greater force. Watch this because it's so important. Good Lord, I'm never going to get to everything today. For the vision is yet for the appointed time. God has timing in your life. I was talking to my son-in-law, Nick, the other day, and he quoted back at me some things that I say about the way that God answers prayer. Sometimes God answers prayer by saying, no, that's not going to happen. Sometimes God answers prayer by saying, slow. That means timing is not right now. So he'll say, go slow. Sometimes God answers prayer by saying, grow, G-R-O-W. If slow means the timing's not right, grow means you're not right. You're not ready for the prayer to be answered. And then sometimes God answers your prayer by saying, go right now, do it. So this is talking about when you're in that middle and it hastens, the vision hastens toward the goal, the goals that you've written out, and it will not fail. It's like he's telling you, look, if it's a God-given dream, it's gonna happen. It will happen. I've just spent 6 years of my life working on a God-given dream. The dream started over at Kennesaw State University with the board from Must. And we sat there and did sticky notes and lined out 5 strategic initiatives that we wanted to complete over the next few years. Number 1 was to build a new homeless shelter. You know how hard it is to build a homeless shelter? People get angry. People get upset. People will go, oh, I think it's a great idea, just not in my backyard. I don't know whose backyard they want everybody to go to. You know, the NIMBYs. Not in my backyard. We went through a nearly 2-year delay. I want you to think about this. 2 years we were stymied because we bought 6.3 acres of land that was zoned for a homeless shelter, but in order to position it on the property the right way, we needed 90 feet so that we didn't have to build a 3-story building. We could build a 2-story building that would fit in with the look of the community. We were delayed for 2 years. So let me give you a little secret. Every God-given dream, write this down. Every God-given dream goes through a cycle. There'll be the birth of the dream, there'll be the death of the dream, and then there'll be the rebirth of the dream. I have never, listen to me, ever had a dream that didn't die somewhere along the way. Some of them enormously painful. All I ever wanted to be was a dad. And then I watched the dream pass away in front of me and losing a wife and child. You don't think I know about gut punches? You don't think I've weathered some days when I thought, God, it'd be so much easier if you'd just take me as well. But here's what I was doing. I was living the story then the way I could tell the story today without having to change anything. When you have a God-given dream, you're going to get some punches. And he's saying you wait for it. It will certainly come. It will not always delay. So walking into that shelter this week, there are people, critical people in this community walked up and said, thank you for not giving up. Thank you for holding on. Thank you for staying with it. Bum Phillips was a coach of the Houston Oilers for years, wore a big old 10-gallon hat and cowboy boots, and Bum looked like a cowboy's cowboy. And he developed this saying, hold the rope. Hold the rope. Everybody's got to hold the rope. You can't give up. Not when life looks like it's out of control. Not when the dream gets shattered right in front of you. You've got to keep going. You've got to do it. And then I told you some in the last week or two about North Star Church. How North Star came about. And how when I was the pastor of the church several years, one day it hit me, the old George Bernard Shaw quote, where George Bernard Shaw said, some men look at the way that things are and they ask, why? Why does life have to be like? Why does life have to have disappointment? It's always about why? Knowing that you may never get the answer to a why question. So the smartest thing you can do is stop asking why and start saying to God, what now? What now do I do? And so he goes on and says, but I look at the way that things could be, and I say, why not? So at North Star Church all of those years ago, I preached on being a why not church. I had no idea this morning that the director of missions here, Darrell Price from the Noonday Association, was going to be here with his family this morning. Didn't see him till after the service. And he said, what you preached today, they'd asked me to do something for the Noonday Association here in the future. He said, I want you to do exactly what you did this morning. And I want you to do it for that group of pastors. Because, you know, the world is a fast-changing place, y'all. Listen, write this quote down. You never want to be the expert in what used to work. Not a big market for them. Not in business, not anywhere. And here's the way I like to say it. How many baby boomers do I have in the room? Let me see my baby boomers, all right? You do not want to be an 8-track tape player in a live streaming world. I loved my 8-track tape player, my 68 Camaro convertible. I'm telling you, I was pretty. And, but now, I got all the music I need on my iPhone. Or, you know, I'll hit Apple and I'll do the playlist there, or Spotify, or, you know, whatever I need. The world has changed. A lot of churches have not changed with it. And that's why 4,500 churches in 2019 closed their doors. What do we do? See, listen, I pastored a church. I'll brag for a moment here. I pastored a church called New Hope. I'm really bragging on them. That church was the second fastest growing church in America in Southern Baptist churches. And at the time, there were 36,000 Southern Baptist churches. And we were number 2. And if you don't think that God has a sense of humor, I mean, think about it. It's hard to brag when you go, we were number 2. Because people are going to go, why weren't you number 1? So I want to set the record straight. We were number 1. I can look out and see some of my members from those days. We were number 1 in one category. We were the fastest growing rural church in America. Let me define rural. You're still on a septic tank. You realize how hard it is, Mark, to brag about, hey, our church is on a septic tank, but we're number 1 in the country. So God has a way of, you know, humbling you and making things right. And listen, that church was absolutely incredible. I wish I had time to share with you all the things I want to share today. So when we started North Star, I went and visited a guy named Steve Sjogren, who has become a lifelong friend. And this was back in 1996. And he was pastoring a great vineyard church up in Cincinnati that was growing like crazy. When I went up, they were having 9 services a weekend, 9. It was insane. And then they built this massive building and everything. And Steve had written a book called Conspiracy of Kindness. And I went up and I met him in Cincinnati. I was there to speak for a conference with the Church of the Nazarene. I was a consultant for that denomination for a number of years. And I went and met Steve, and we talked about Conspiracy of Kindness. And he's a charismatic, right? Pentecostal. And so he said, God's telling me to tell you something right now. And when those folks talk, I listen. He said, number 1, and we were getting ready to plant North Star Church. He said, do not go plant a church. Well, my little heart dropped, because here's a guy that's talking to God going, do not go plant a church. And I'm like, oh. And then he said, go reach a city. Whew. You talk about a switch? I hope I could see it so clear. Still trying to build a church, go out and reach a city. Changed everything about the way that we were going to have an operating platform to reach our community. And then he said, hey, Ike, if you will take the people in your church that nobody wants, God will give you the people in your church that every church would die to have. And that's what we did. And that's why North Star Church has been so amazing. And Mike Lynch, was the guy that stepped in as soon as I was exiting that door. There wasn't any question because I started the church from scratch myself with my credit card, so I could say, here's who the next pastor is going to be. And Mike was that guy. Mike Lynch has been the same human being since I first knew him when he was 10 years old and he grew up in my church. You just could not ask for a finer person. Just absolutely stellar. And so Mike has done a tremendous job in leading that church. And we recently celebrated the 25th anniversary of the church. But we started out, we wanted to plant churches. And so in the first 15 years, I don't know what the number would be now, but in the first 15 years, we helped about 50 churches get started across the country. There's a lot of North Stars now because that was the name that God gave us in those days. And, we just, we said, here's what we're going to do, and here's the way that we're going to go. And so we were focused and passionate about meeting needs of the community. And, most new churches are hungry to be able to try new things, to be able to engage people. And maybe they don't have buildings, and so they look for new opportunities. And then the other thing we found is we were finding new opportunities for current believers to find their sweet spot in serving, because I'm convinced that that's the deal that sets it apart. Think about Jesus himself. Think about the way he tells you about his ministry. Every time he was talking, he would use his favorite title. It's called Son of Man. The Son of Man, the Son of Man. He said, the Son of Man came to seek and to save those which are lost. That's our target audience. People that have never experienced Jesus Christ. People that spiritually have not found their way. That's our target audience. Then he said, the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve. So we said, so what we're going to do to seek and save those which are lost, we're going to go out and we're going to serve our community. Then the other thing he said about the Son of Man is the Son of Man came to destroy the works of the devil. Wherever we can find a place where the devil's at work, if we can go in there and do ministry and help change attitudes, then that's going to be the thing that we are going to do. And so that's the kind of church that we were. Some men see things the way they are and they ask why, but we were seeing things the way they could be, and we were saying, why not? I mean, why not be the church that's connecting the bridge between the business community and the church community? I mean, the cross itself is a bridge of connection. The horizontal and the vertical are connecting. And so our mission has been, we exist to show God's love in such a way that people would exchange ordinary living for an extraordinary life through the transforming power of Jesus Christ. Now, at North Star, that was our genetic code, was to do things differently. But when I came to Piedmont, there was already genetics that were going on. And so it took us a while to be able to do some things and to be able to get to where we wanted to be. Because what can happen with churches is you fall in a rut, and a rut is nothing but a grave with both ends kicked out. And you just stay in the grave. So we wanted to be a church that had a different kind of vision. Instead of doing a big day of serving, instead of doing a big week of serving, what if we served every day? Because, the world is shrinking and America is changing rapidly. And our community is a microcosm of the world itself. And we have a postmodern mindset that rejects moral absolutes and all of those kinds of things. A lot of people today consider the Bible a work of literature. It's just filled with myths and metaphors. And it sees church as irrelevant and impractical for today's society. And at best, the world is trying to ignore Christianity, and at its worst is hostile to it. The world sees America as the number 2 mission field that's out there. That's where we are today. But we've been called to do something. Os Guinness made this statement: we're called to someone, God, and we're called to do something, our area of ministry, and we're called to do it somewhere. Never allow the somewhere to become more important than the someone. So you know what we decided to do? We decided that we were going to be that church that thought differently. And so the day that you live for the benefit of insiders rather than outsiders is the day your organization will begin to die. Your business or anything else. And the basic law of church is, if you reach out, you're going to live. If you reach in, you're going to die. And we're not going to try to grow a church. We're going to try to grow people and make them fully devoted followers of Jesus Christ. And when we do that, you eradicate this hierarchy of some people are ordained and the other people are laity. And we just say, look, everybody is a minister in this church, and everybody can be a missionary to our culture, meaning outside of our walls. And we said we're going to develop disciples, not raise money. And we wanted to reverse the Pareto principle. How many of you are familiar with Pareto, the 20-80 principle? 20% of the people do 80% of the sales in an organization. 20% of the people in a fraternal organization will do 80% of the work and serve on the committees and all that kind of stuff. 20% of people in a church will fill 80% of the roles that we have to go on. Do you know this works in amazing ways? 20% of your carpet gets walked on, 80% doesn't. Ever notice that? And then if you have a picnic, 20% of the people will eat 80% of your food. Identify those people. Do not invite them to your next picnic. You're going to save a lot of money. I'm just telling you. So here's what we wanted to do. We wanted to make sure that we had a church that reversed the 20-80. What if 80% of the people got involved in a ministry? And it wasn't just on the staff. It would absolutely change everything. You know, Jeremiah 29:7, one of Marlon as our community pastor and Angie, their favorite verse, seek the welfare of the city where I've sent you into exile and pray to the Lord on its behalf. Now listen, for in its welfare, you will have welfare. As our community goes, so goes our church. As we invest in schools and you have better schools, then more people want to move into that zip code. Ask people with children, they're looking at the zip code. We want to get our kids in certain schools. So the message is, if things go well for Babylon, then things are going to go well for you. So now in bullet point, here's what we said we wanted to be as a Why Not church. So Matt, I'll ask you and the team to come on out and join me. Why not be a church that so impacts the Atlanta area with compassion that people will just automatically think of us when a need arises, or if a need's been met, that they go, I bet Piedmont Church helped. Why not be the first call in our community when there is a need? We said it like this: we want to be the Ken Nugent of churches. Then y'all can help me with this. One call, that's all. That's who I want us to be. Why not reach a city rather than just plant a church? Why not take the people that no other church wants? Why not become notorious for how much we give rather than being known for how much we ask for? You know why that's so important to me? Because the number one reason people tell me that they invited someone to come to church, they say to them, when I went, all the preacher did was talk about money. Money. I don't want us to be that church. My friend Jeff Henderson has written a book called For. And it's about what are you for in life. And he talks about there's two things that are out there. Let's say you got a business or you got a church and you go, this is what we want to be known for. But then there's this other side. Here's what the community knows you for. And he says, the problem is the gap. When we think we're one thing, but our community looks at us and go, nope, that's not who you are. So that's why we made the decision, we'll not try to be the best church in our community. We'll try to be the best church for our community. Why not impact our community with acts of compassion? To the extent that the business community comes to us in an effort to have joint partnerships on major projects where we're at that table. Why not love our community so much they finally say, why? Why are you doing this? And then we can say, well, one of our core values at Piedmont is that people matter to God, so people matter to us. Why not invest in our schools with mentors and volunteers that are going to be shaping the leaders of tomorrow? Why not do that? Why not send a message strong and clear? Hey, if you've got a broken world going on in your life, you can go to Piedmont and they're not going to sit there and judge you. They're going to love you. Why not be the place where every one of you, that we are the ministers in this church and we're the missionary to the culture? And why not be the church that knows how to step out and lead big? Man, I'd like to be a part of that church. Y'all like to be a part of that church? I sure would. So here's the deal. Remember the initial quote? Let me do this, Matt. Then I'm going to get it out of the way. I'm going to get up so y'all can move this table and everything. Let me go back to the original quote, because we're getting ready to sing a song that's so perfect to end this day. Anything God has ever done, He can do now. Anything God has ever done anywhere, He can do right here. Anything that God has ever done for anyone, He can do for you. We want God to do it again in the life of this church. Let's fill this place up. Let's reach more people than ever before. Let's see those baptismal waters stirred. Let's see this congregation growing. We've been through 2 years of a pandemic. Let's get the unity that it takes for us to reach this world. Let's do it, Piedmont, right here. Would you stand with me? I'm going to pray, and then they're going to sing. Stand with me. Father, if there's someone here that does not know Jesus, I pray that right now they just say, God, I acknowledge you. I believe on your name. I confess my sin. I confess you as Lord. And then say to him, come into my heart right now, Lord Jesus. And I pray today you've made that commitment. You're standing there. God stirred your heart today through this message, not through my words. That's called the Holy Spirit working in your life. Don't let those embers go down. Stir them up. Come down here today. Take an action step. Get in this altar. Kneel down and pray if you can, or stand beside the communion table or around the walls. You're saying, God, I want you to use me. God, I want you to move me. God, I want you to replace my plan with your plan. God, I want to be a part of the we that reaches this community. And I want you to pray. Elders, I want you praying. Leaders, dream team members, I want you praying. What is my role? What am I going to do to make that difference? And then God, when we've done what only we can do, then you're going to do the only thing that we need, and that's what you can do to empower us and to help us to meet every need. So God, break every chain, break every mental barrier that's there, break that idea that God can't use me because of what I've done in the past. And God, help us to know you're much more interested in our future than our past, because you've already covered it with the blood of Jesus. God, thank you for giving us a fresh start today. Help us to be that why not church, Lord. Just do it again. In Jesus' name and through his blood, I pray. Amen.